nothing is going to compensate. If you can't accept who you are, there's nothing that can compensate for that. Welcome to the Ruckus Podcast, where we talk about being a person of influence and how you can impact the culture and the world around you. Not only that, but how you can help others do the same. Now today, I'm going to get a little vulnerable with you, and I'm going to share one of my most disappointing moments in my life. I was 29, and I had just moved back to my hometown, Santa Maria. I was part of a church planting team, and I'd moved there to help plant a church. Now, for me, mentally and emotionally, it was a bit of a struggle because I was moving back home. I felt like I was taking a step backwards in life. And what made it even more challenging was at this time, there was a lot of really great things happening around me that I was celebrating and was really excited for. I had friends who were getting married. I had friends who were having kids. I had friends who were buying houses and who were getting new jobs or getting promotions at their job or getting these massive raises. And while I celebrated that and I love it, I love to see my friends happy, blessed, winning. I love seeing that. I love celebrating my friends. But when I started thinking about my life, I started getting really discouraged because I started thinking about all the things I hadn't accomplished. I started thinking about all the things that I didn't have. And I started to spiral downhill, just mentally and emotionally about my life, and began to get really discouraged and depressed about my life. And I actually got in a pretty dark place. And, after several months of being isolated and just keeping to myself, I decided that the answer to my problems was to buy a house. If I bought a house, that would be an accomplishment. That would make me feel validation. That would make me feel like I accomplished something. That would make me feel like I'm keeping up with my peers. So I remember I saved up. I did the whole beans and rice thing, super frugal. Ended up saving up and finally throwing an offer on a house, and the offer was accepted. I remember when my realtor called me, I was so excited. I'm like, yes, finally, I have something to show for who I am, and I finally have something to show for my life. I remember it was a 2-month escrow, and I drove by the house every day. I mean, I'm sure that's creepy, and it is what it is, but I was just so excited, and I drove by it every day just dreaming about how good it was going to feel to have my own keys to my own house. And I remember the day I got my keys, and my realtor handed them to me. I was so excited. I'm like, man, I've made it. I have made it in life. I finally own a house. And I remember that night we had cell group, which is kind of the young men's discipleship group and mentorship group through our church. I remember I invited all the guys over. I didn't have any furniture. I couldn't afford any. So we all just hung out in the living room, sat on the floor, but there was so much laughter. We were so happy. I just remember feeling so good with my friends there and just thinking, man, I have made it in life. Anyways, my friends hung out for a long time. They probably left at about 1 a.m. And I remember when I closed the door behind the last person, I looked at my living room. I'm like, wow, it's a nice living room. Remember, I walked upstairs and looked at my bedrooms and the bathroom upstairs. I'm like, man, those are some nice bedrooms, and that is a nice bathroom. Then I went downstairs and looked at the master bedroom, the master bathroom, the spare bathroom, and the garage, the backyard, and I just looked at everything. I'm like, man, this place is so nice. And then I remember I sat down on the floor in the living room, and I was just so discouraged because I realized, shoot, I feel the exact same. Now, am I grateful I bought the house? Absolutely. And I'm grateful every day. I thank God every day for giving me the opportunity to have a house as nice as mine is. And I consider myself very blessed. Please don't hear this as I'm sad that I bought a house. But the thing that I learned is that if you don't like yourself, if you can't accept yourself, no house is ever going to compensate for that. No amount of money is ever going to compensate for that. No car is ever going to compensate for you not liking yourself. No wife, no child, nothing is going to compensate. If you can't accept who you are, there's nothing that can compensate for that. And that was a lesson I learned the hard way, is if you can't accept yourself and you can't accept what God thinks about you, right, there's nothing that can fill that void. You got to have a conversation with yourself. You have to fix something in your life. And I want to encourage those of you who are listening. Maybe you weren't quite as discouraged as I was about my life, but when you think about your life, you're like, man, my better days are behind me. I don't know, I don't know what my future looks like. I don't really like myself. If you struggle with any of those things, I really want to help you. I think I could share some things with you that might help you through that. And so if you're in that place where you struggle with who you are and you struggle with your life and where you've ended up, the first thing that you have to do, the stake that you have to put in the ground, is you have to remember that your life matters. You have to remember that your life matters. That you're here for a purpose. You're not an accident. You're not just some random lump of cells that got put on Earth to fill space. That you're created for a purpose. It doesn't matter if your parents didn't plan you. I don't care how many people in your life have rejected you, have used you, and have walked out on you. You were created for a purpose. You were created for a great purpose, and God was very intentional when he created you. And you have to remember that, and you have to remind yourself that every day, multiple times every day if you have to. The Bible says the truth will set you free. And the truth is that you were fearfully and wonderfully made. But you got to remember, you got to remind yourself, you got to change the way you think, you got to flip the story that you tell yourself. Right? Well, how do you do that? Well, a great way to do that is spending time in prayer. It's time in prayer and reading the Bible. Now, for those of you who aren't Christian, do it anyway. Try it. Try it and tell me how it works for you. I guarantee you it will help you remember that you're valuable. It will help you remember that you bear the image of God, and therefore that you have value and you have meaning and you have purpose. Right? That God created you because he loves you and because he has a plan for your life, and that you are loved. And maybe you haven't figured out what that looks like here on earth yet, but it is the truth, and you will find it if you don't give up. So number one, you got to remember that you have a purpose, that your life matters, that your life counts, and that this world is going to be a much worse place without you in it. You have to know that, and you have to believe that. Okay. Number two is you got to surround yourself with the right people. You have to surround yourself with the right people, which is a difficult thing to do when you're discouraged, because the number one thing people tend to do when they're discouraged or when they're depressed is to isolate, is to go off by themselves. But the problem with that is that you have only one voice talking in that conversation about who you are, right? And if you're discouraged about yourself and you're the only person talking to you and about your situation, that's going to be a very discouraging conversation. I don't know about you, but I don't know if you've ever been in a good mood and you're like, happy, even in a fairly good mood, and you start hanging out with like really negative people. Isn't it annoying? Like just people who, it doesn't matter how good something is, it doesn't matter how much fun people are having, they're just going to complain and whine and just bring everyone down, right? That's annoying. And the ironic thing is that a lot of times we do that to ourselves. And when you get discouraged and you get depressed, and you just begin having this negative conversation with you about you, it turns into a cycle that you can't get out of. You need another voice to come in and to enter the conversation, right? And to change the direction of that conversation. You need people in your life who know you, who love you, who value you, who call out the person in you that you're meant to be. People who hold you accountable. People who let you know how appreciated and how loved you are. And I will never forget, I had this moment with one of my really great friends. I was in a moment where I was just really discouraged and depressed about my life. It's kind of around the same time before I bought the house. And he just looked at me. He's like, Justin, dude, you've accomplished so much with your life, man. You've overcome so many things that most people couldn't even imagine. He says, you've achieved things that most people never will achieve. You've inspired so many people. What is wrong with you, man? Why can't you see it? Why don't you see what we see? And I love that conversation because it confronted the way I thought about myself, and it began to introduce a new perspective, which was a true perspective that, you know what? No, my life is important, and wow, I actually have done some pretty cool things with my life, and hey, maybe I'm not a loser. Maybe I've actually done some really cool things. Hey, maybe there's actually hope for my future. You see, you need people to remind you of who you are. Sometimes when you're struggling and you need to piggyback off of someone else's faith, you need those people around you who are going to call it out. And I remember after that conversation, I started to make a list. He said, I want you to make a list of the things that you're proud of about yourself. And so I remember I made a quick little list. It was about 3 lines. I showed it to him. He said, no, 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 no. He says, I want you to write more. So it turned from 3 lines to about half a page. And he looked at me like I was crazy. He said, dude, you've got way more. I want you to write more. So I started writing more and more and more. I eventually came up with 3 pages worth of things that I was proud of about myself. Accomplishments, things I'd overcome, people I'd helped, just milestones in my life. And what I did was I put that list up in my room and I looked at it every day. And I began to change the way I thought about myself. So you have to understand that you have to have people in your life. You can't do this alone. Life was not designed to be lived alone. And you will never fulfill your purpose alone. Why? Because you're meant to be a part of a community, right? You're meant to serve people. That is part of your purpose, is to impact others around you. That is part of the purpose of this podcast, is to learn how to impact people around you. But in order to do that, you got to believe in yourself, and you have to learn to accept yourself. And you got to learn to be able to see in you what other people see. Okay. Third thing you need to do, if you're stuck in this rut, is you need to serve others. Go find a way to serve other people. A great opportunity to do this is at a local church. Go to church. There are tons of opportunities to serve people. Go to church, and then if you got more time throughout the week, go join a local charity, local community outreach type event, and just go serve. Go help someone. If there's someone in your life who you know is depressed and needs a friend, go buy them lunch, go buy them coffee, go do something. But go serve somebody. And I guarantee you that when you start serving people, you're starting to actually tap into your purpose and why you were created, which is going to start to resonate a lot more with who you are, which by nature is going to start making you believe a lot better things about yourself, right? You're going to begin to start to feel good about yourself. Go figure, right? Go serve people. See, when you can start taking your mind off of yourself and you start focusing on others, right, you're going to begin to realize that you have a lot to offer people and that you have a lot to offer the world. So if you're starting to get discouraged when you look inward, look outward. Go help others. Go serve others. Go help a friend. As a matter of fact, if you're listening to this podcast, I want to challenge you right now to hit pause. I want you to write down something that you could do for someone in your life, an act of service. It could be taking them to lunch. It could be helping them with a project they have. It could be helping them clean. I don't know, just something. But come up with something that you could do to help someone. All right, and then come check back and tell me how you feel afterwards. Okay. And then number 4 is you have to get honest with yourself. This is a hard one. Number 4 is you have to get honest with yourself. You see, the truth is that, there's a really big kind of self-love, self-acceptance movement out there, and I can really appreciate the heart of it. And, there's a lot of things that I kind of agree with that. But I think one of the pitfalls and one of the things that it leads to is that movement kind of leads a little bit to self-worship, where people start worshiping themselves. And not only that, but people start overlooking a lot of their negative habits and a lot of the toxic things in their life that they need to deal with. It just kind of teaches you to accept it. Now, I'm a big believer that you do have to learn how to love yourself, but you have to have an honest conversation with yourself. And if there are things in your life that are holding you back from being the person you want to be, right? If you have toxic, destructive habits or vices in your life that you need to deal with, you need to address them. Because I guarantee you, a lot of those habits are what is dragging you down and is what is making you feel so negative about yourself, right? You got to have an honest conversation with yourself about your habits. How do you do that? Here's what I'd recommend doing, is I'd recommend just making a list of all your habits, as many habits as you can think of, good, bad, in the middle, in between, right? I wake up at this time every day. I like to eat this for lunch. This is how I like my coffee. I say this word a lot. I tap my pen a lot, right? That's something I do, is I'm always tapping on things, and it drives people nuts, but it's a habit. Maybe I'll stop, but probably not. But what you need to do is you need to make a list of habits, and then you need to look at the ones that are taking you away from who you want to be, and you need to address them. I'll tell you a very bad habit I had, that having people in my life who saw me and who called me out on it actually helped me overcome it. One of my most toxic habits in my life was I would eat fast food all the time. I mean, for about a 3-year stretch, 90 to 95% of my diet was fast food, right? And when people would ask me about it, when I would talk about it, why I was always so tired, why I was always so groggy, why I was always out of shape, why I was always depressed, the food thing would always come up, and I'd always be like, well, you guys don't understand. I've got a full-time job, and after full-time job, I've got ministry, right? That's a good thing. And so I'm serving people all day, and I just don't have time. I leave my house super early in the morning. I get back super late at night. I don't have time to cook, and it's just a stressful thing, and fast food is just what fits my lifestyle. But fortunately, I have friends in my life who have helped me, have helped challenge that perspective, and they helped me realize that, no, let's just take it at just face value. Typically, when you eat junk, you feel like junk, physically and emotionally, right? The way that you eat actually determines a lot about how you feel emotionally, mentally, and physically. And if you constantly eat junk, it is very hard to feel good about yourself and to feel good about your life. Because as the saying goes, you are what you eat, right? Food, but also, what type of media you consume, what kinds of things you listen to. That's a whole nother podcast. But you see, eating bad and eating fast food all the time, I'm surprised I'm still here, first off, but I'm surprised that I was ever in a good mood, right? And so when I began to realize, hey, maybe this food is why I'm always feeling so depressed, then I started peeling the layers back a bit. I said, well, the reason I do it is because I don't have time to cook. Well, why don't I have time to cook? Well, shoot, I leave my house at 6 in the morning and I don't get home till 10 p.m. and that's Monday through Friday. And I don't have any time for myself to take care of myself, right, to cook a meal for myself. My schedule is that booked and that packed to where I can't even make a meal for myself in the day. You see, that's a problem. You see, and that is a big factor that is contributing to all these other things that are snowballing that are just keeping me in a funk, right? And so as you begin to address these habits, you're going to start to find that the layers peel back more and more and more and more and more. And you're going to begin to really deal with the root. And you're going to have a chance to take axe to the root of those issues in your life. But you got to confront them and you got to be honest with yourself. Don't give yourself a pass about habits that are destroying your life. If you're struggling with eating, right, as I was, if you're struggling with social media addiction, pornography addiction, alcohol addiction, whatever addiction it is, deal with it because it's killing you. And if you're like, I have that in my life, but that's not it. Trust me, bro, it's it. That is it. That is what is hurting you, and that is what is pulling you off the course of who you're meant to be. And that is what's distorting your view of yourself and your view of the person that God has created you to be. So have an honest conversation with yourself. Bring other people into that conversation to help you, but have an honest conversation and deal with the things that are holding you back. Confront them and get rid of them. So, if you're in a rut, I hope this episode helped. If you're stuck, you feel discouraged about your life, and you feel discouraged about where you've ended up, number one, remind yourself that you're here for a reason, right? That you're not an accident, that you're here for a purpose, and that you have something very special to give the world, that the world needs, and that the world is a much worse place without you in it. Okay, number two is you got to get people in your life who love you and who care about you. Don't be afraid of people. If you've been wounded by people, make yourself vulnerable again, right? Love it absolutely makes you vulnerable, but you need it. Get people in your life who love you and who care about you. Number three, go serve someone. Don't be so inward all the time. Look outward, right? When you start training yourself to look outward, it's going to give you a different perspective on life, including your own and who you are. And number four, be honest with yourself and confront the things in your life that are holding you back, that are keeping you a slave, and that are robbing you of your future and of your identity. So I hope this episode was encouraging for you. Please subscribe on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere there's podcasts, we're there. We've got a lot more exciting content coming out to you, but much love. Till next time, we'll see you.